KMB fare hike application comes under scrutiny. Paul Chan plays down concerns about housing scheme for local residents, and Afghanistan votes in landmark presidential election.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a controversy over an application by KMB to raise fares. The bus company is seeking a 4.3% increase, but as Evelina Lung reports, calculations based on a fare adjustment mechanism point to a smaller hike.
KMB fares went up by 4.9% in March last year. Now the company is seeking a 4.3% increase. The government will take a number of factors into consideration when considering the fare hike application. These include, for example, KMB's operating costs and projected returns. And under a fare adjustment mechanism that involves the nominal wage index transportation section, the consumer price index, and the productivity factor, the recommended level of increase comes to 3.99%. That's lower than the 4.3% KMB is looking for. Many commuters we talked to today are unhappy with another possible fare hike.
I'm a normal living person. My income is normal. And they're raising the fare. Someone should raise my income also, right? That will be like fair enough. But income is same.
It's not reasonable, I think. Yeah, because they will do a lot of policy to downgrade his costing already.
No, it's not fair. The standard of living is already quite high. So the people at the lower end of the spectrum, it would be harder for them just to go traveling every day.
Leo Democrats lawmaker Gary Fan said instead of increasing fares, KMB should consider ways to increase passenger numbers to try to boost revenue. KMB has been trying to rearrange and reorganize unprofitable routes to try to reduce losses. But the move has met opposition at district level. District councillors said KMB should take the interests of passengers into consideration in its realignment plan. Evelina Lang, TVB News.
Secretary for Development Paul Chan today brushed aside concerns about possible changes to the leases for the two sites in Kai Tak under the Hong Kong Property for Hong Kong People scheme. As Rani Samtani reports, Chan said developers won't be allowed to make changes easily.
The government insists it hasn't turned its back on offering homes to Hong Kong residents. Two sites at Kai Tak were bought by China Overseas Land last year as part of the Hong Kong Property for Hong Kong People policy. Reports have surfaced of a loophole in the policy that would allow developers to apply for changes in the leases and to cancel the provision benefiting only Hong Kong residents after 5 years. Secretary for Development Paul Chan today clarified that the Lands Department will not give the green light to such changes easily.
Lands Department will examine each and every lease modification on its own merit, taking into full consideration government's policy in that respect. And I must clarify that the government's policy in respect of the pilot scheme, in respect of the two sites in Kai Tak remain unchanged.
Chan explained that under the policy, buyers of the flats at the Kai Tak sites must be permanent residents, and this condition will continue to apply to the subsequent resales of the units for 30 years from the date of the land grant. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying hinted earlier this week that the Hong Kong Property for Hong Kong People policy had been put aside. The development chief explained that the number of non-Hong Kong residents buying local property has dropped substantially, but the government insists the policy could be implemented again when needed in the future. Still, Chan said the imbalance between supply and demand in the property market has not changed. He says the administration will continue to work towards achieving the target of generating 470,000 housing units in the next 10 years. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
Former Chief Secretary for Administration Anson Chan and former Democratic Party lawmaker Martin Lee both discussed the situation in Hong Kong with U.S. Vice President Joe Biden during their visit to Washington. The meeting was held at the White House yesterday. Biden voiced U.S. support for Hong Kong's democratic development and the city's high degree of autonomy under one country, two systems. Chan and Lee have been speaking about Hong Kong's future during their American visit amid concerns about democracy and universal suffrage here.
Afghan voters went to the polls today to elect their next president. As Alan Booknia reports, it will be the first democratic transfer of power since the fall of the Taliban in 2001.
Afghan voters began queuing up early, defying threats of violence by the Taliban, who conducted a series of bombings and suicide attacks in the run-up to the election. Nearly 350,000 Afghan security forces fanned out across the country to protect polling stations. Many foreign observers left Afghanistan in the wake of a deadly Taliban attack on a hotel in Kabul last month. However, one who stayed behind was killed yesterday. 48-year-old Anya Niedringhaus, a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer for the Associated Press, was a veteran of Afghan coverage. Her co-worker, senior correspondent Kathy Gannon, was wounded in the attack that killed Niedringhaus. A senior police officer apparently opened fire on them as they reported on preparations for today's poll. About 12 million people are eligible to vote, and there was an air of defiance to the Taliban as they cast their ballots.
The people of Afghanistan are more committed to go to the polling station for many reasons. Number one, they want to say no to the Taliban. The second, they want to say yes to democracy and to the election.
Outgoing President Hamid Karzai was one of the first to cast his ballot. He's not allowed to run for a third term under the country's constitution. There are 8 candidates in the election, with former Finance Minister Ashraf Ghani seen as one of the favorites. He has a reputation of being a somewhat temperamental technocrat. Zalmay Rassoul, a former foreign minister, is known to have close ties to Karzai. The third frontrunner is another former foreign minister, Abdullah Abdullah. He gained 31% of the vote running against Karzai in the 2009 election that was marred by ballot stuffing and fraud. And while most people expect this election to be better run, it could still be a while before a winner is declared. If no candidate wins a clear majority, the 2 highest vote-getters will stand in a runoff election on May 28th. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
3 men have been sentenced to death in India in connection with another rape case that shocked the country. A court in Mumbai heard they raped a photojournalist inside an abandoned textile mill last year. A 4th defendant was jailed for life. The 3 men were also found guilty last month of raping a call center operator at the same mill, 1 month before the attack on the photojournalist. They were described as habitual offenders. India increased penalties for sex crimes and moved rape trials faster after a medical student was gang raped on a moving bus in December 2012. She later died in hospital.
To the latest in the search for that missing Malaysia Airlines plane, Xinhua news agency reported a short while ago that a Chinese patrol ship has just discovered a pulse signal in the southern Indian Ocean. And a Chinese Air Force plane has spotted a number of white floating objects. This as the Malaysian plane's black box battery will cease to work in just a little more than 24 hours.
The U.S. Naval towed pinger locator is now working around the clock.
The towed pinger has been deployed today on Ocean Shield. The search is currently ongoing, and of course it's not just Ocean Shield that's doing the search with the towed pinger, but HMS Echo, the British oceanographic ship.
The technology being towed works to pick up the sound of black box pings or chirps below the surface of the ocean. Britain is also sending a nuclear submarine with sonar capabilities to lend a helping hand, as will a Malaysian frigate. As for finding signs of wreckage on the water, a total of 8 countries are tasked with that job. Those on board 14 planes and 11 ships have vowed to leave no wave unchecked in a 217,000 square kilometer span of the Indian Ocean. In addition to treacherous ocean conditions, searchers face yet another problem.
The middle of the ocean, where they're actually looking at the moment in the search area, is also the middle of the garbage patch. So they're looking for a system that has this sort of natural accumulation of debris as well.
Sadly, there are no new satellite sightings or leads in the investigation. So finding the plane's black box voice and data recorders are what holds the key to the fate of flight MH370. If nothing is found by the time the black box battery dies out, authorities will be forced to change the scope of their search. They'll have to begin sweeping the ocean floor with both sonar and radar technology. Meantime, Malaysia's Prime Minister expressed gratitude to all those taking part in the search. He called it a remarkable effort that's brought together nations from around the world.
And when we come back, a show of force by government supporters in Thailand. Locally, the civil service chief stresses transparency in extending retirement age, and a winning debut by the Yankees' new Japanese star.